Welcome to the Leading Hope Podcast with Kevin Jack. Your influence will lead people somewhere, lead them towards hope. Everyone has 20 minutes to learn to become a better leader. Make it count.
Welcome to Leading Hope with Kevin Jack. I'm your host, VJ Williams, here with my friend and pastor, Kevin Jack. Thank you for joining us and taking time out of your day to become a better leader. We release a new episode every Wednesday, so we'd love for you to share on social media and bring others along with us on this journey of becoming a better leader. Visit leadinghope.online to get updates and find out more about the Leading Hope community. If you're new to the podcast or haven't yet subscribed, it would mean the world to us if you did that now. Also, post about it, rate and review. You will not believe how that helps get this podcast in the hands of so many more leaders like you. Today, we continue our series on courage. Kevin, episode 52.
Share the title.
52. He worked all month on this.
All month.
The title, you ready? Not Courage.
Not Courage.
Not Courage. There you go.
Welcome to our series, Not Courage, the title. Or welcome to our series, Courage. The title is Not Courage.
That's great. That's the way we start this out.
There we go. Nothing like, all right, VJ wanted to call the title stupid, but that's kind of the title for the next one. Yeah. So we couldn't fully share that.
All
right.
Don't leave.
So in this podcast series, we're talking about courage. Last week, we explored the idea that courage establishes you as a leader, not your talent, not your skill, not your ability, not your accomplishments. Courage is the thing that establishes you as a leader. Now, within that idea is a problem. And what we're going to do in this episode is we're going to deal with half the problem, and then we're going to get to the second half in the next one. So I'm just going to poke holes in the idea of what we think courage is, and then we're going to actually do some construction in episode 53 to really define what that courage looks like. So here's the problem, and it comes in three different forms. When we talk about courage, we don't understand what courage is. And so we think things are courage that aren't actually courage. And there is a massive difference. So here's the first thing that we view. We often define reckless as courage. There we go. I'm being courageous. No, you're being reckless. Yeah. You're being careless. That's not courage at all. This is the person who comes into a new job or a new role or a new team, and they make sweeping changes without knowing the context of what they're dealing with, the strengths of the team, or how they fit into the organization as a whole. They'll come in and be like, we're not doing it right. We're not staying in this old same pattern. We're going to do something different. And so they'll just start like, oh, we're going to do this brand new thing without any awareness of what was already happened. That person is reckless. That is not courageous. It is misguided, and it is ill-informed. And I think that's just a hard thing, is we'll say, this is courageous. Oh, it's not. Like, that's not what courage is. Another problem is oftentimes we will view being never for someone else, okay? Let me just specify that. Never for someone else. But for ourselves, we will view being disagreeable as courageous. We say, yeah, oh, I'm being courageous. No, you're just really hard to work with. This is the air quotes truth teller. I guess part of you are on video. I could actually use the air quotes for those of you who are on video. This is the truth teller who always corrects everyone and won't ever just go with the flow. I'm not saying, man, this is a series on courage. You should not always go with the flow, but you should also never go with the. You should go with the flow sometimes. You understand that, okay? Like the person who is always like correcting everything. Well, I don't think that. I disagree with that. Like sometimes you just need to move along, and it is not worth disagreeing about. There is a time to stand up for what's right, but there's a difference between what is morally right and simply what you think should happen.
Yep.
Okay?
Pick your battles.
Yeah, it's more than enough on some issues to voice your opinion and then let it go. And we have all worked with people who weren't able to let anything go. And it's like, dude, this thing doesn't matter that much. And eventually your team quits fighting back. Eventually you exhaust them because what you think is a matter of right and wrong, which really isn't. Eventually they're just exhausted and will let you have your way. You're not courageous. You're just hard to work with. Okay? If you're disagreeing on everything, you're disagreeable. You're not courageous. And then the third, this is a little bit more all-encompassing, is that courage is often the excuse for the person who is truly arrogant. And this is, I've got this played out in my notes as kind of a back and forth. The leader says, I'm willing to go out on my own. The team thinks, you haven't heard us. The leader goes, I'm willing to do this on my own. The team goes, you're not listening. The leader says, I'm willing to take that risk. The team thinks, you have no idea who this will hurt. It's worth the risk to them because they have no idea how it will impact anyone other than them. The leader says, sometimes you just have to make the tough call. And the team thinks, you're not at risk of losing anything. You'll just move on. Let me talk about this within ministry. I'll see pastors walk into churches that are struggling. Okay, so like self-admitted, like struggling. And they'll walk in and they'll make wholesale sweeping changes because they're courageous. And they don't work. And the pastor moves on and goes to another church. And all the people who have been negatively impacted by those sweeping changes are still there.
Yeah.
It's not courage. Like, you're reckless, you're careless, you're not listening, and you're arrogant. And so this is just it's a really hard thing, is because courage, this is how I wrote it in my notes. For it to be courage, you must know what's at stake. You must know who will be impacted by it and how. And knowing that, you're willing to move forward anyway. And so this is kind of how I view it. Courage never shuts its eyes.
Oh, that's good.
Courage always has its eyes wide open. And it is so much easier to make sweeping changes and hard decisions. Let's put it in a business sense. Like, let's say you have to do layoffs. It's so easy to do layoffs if you outsource the firing process to someone else. That's a piece of cake.
Yep.
But if it's your people, you need to have the conversation.
Yep.
It can't be anyone else. It has to be, you have to know the impact of the decisions that you're making. Otherwise, it's not courage. This is the dictionary definition of courage. There are two different definitions. The ability to do something that frightens one, or strength in the face of pain or grief. So it's not an ability to do something if it doesn't scare you because you already have your exit plan. The ability to do something that frightens one means there should be some level of fear involved. If you don't feel any fear, it means you haven't felt the weight of it. It's not strength in the face of pain or grief if you'll just move on to the next thing and it doesn't hurt you. Anyway, you have to be stronger than the difficulty, not dumber, not more isolated, and not more stubborn than the difficulty. You must be stronger than the difficulty. And I know that wasn't as long of as a lead-in as we usually hit on, but I think it was important before we move any further in this series on courage. And again, we'll get to what courage is more specifically, and the next episode is all about what is the difference. It was a question I wanted to figure out, what is the difference between stupidity and courage? And so that's what we're going to hit on this next one. But I just see so often people claim courage, and it's really a lack of character. It's a lack of awareness. It's some other character deficit, or they've already got their exit plan in place and they're going to move on from the people who this decision is going to hurt. And it's not a big deal to them. And to just call it out for once and to go, that isn't courage.
Yeah.
That's a deficiency of your character. It is not courage.
Yep. I couldn't agree more. So much to unpack there. Where I'm going to start is probably not where you thought.
Okay.
Which is going to be great.
Great.
So here's what you said this about, I think either twice or three times, my count might be wrong, talked about sweeping changes.
Sweeping changes.
Sweeping changes. And so you'll be starting your fourth year
Fourth
coming
year.
up in the new year here.
Yeah.
In a few months.
Here at Be Hope Church.
At Be Hope Church which was Beaver Creek Nazarene. That was a change itself to go to Be Hope, so we could plant campuses in different cities, what have you. But when you came in, you didn't make sweeping changes. You knew there was going to be changes that had to be sweeping.
Yep.
But you didn't come in doing sweeping changes, if that makes sense. Talk about what your strategy was coming in. I knew that you came in to listen first, come with eyes wide open and ears completely open, but then also knowing in the back of your mind that things do need to progress in certain areas in order for us to be the church in which God has called us to be.
Yeah. So the history of our church had experienced incredible growth. Over the years, like phenomenal growth. And it's a history of courageous leaders, like honestly. And I'll say it as a courageous church, because you don't get consistent, courageous leadership unless if the people who they are leading are encouraging that level of courage. So like walking in, I knew there was something right. But then declines over a couple years, financially, attendance, things like that. I also knew there was something off.
Yes.
And I knew there was something that had to change. And I laugh about this. I just laugh because I go, honestly, how on earth did I even get offered that job? Like, how on earth? Because every question that was asked of me in terms of what I would do about a different thing, I answered, I don't know. I don't know the people. Yeah. So it was like, what are we going to do about discipleship? I don't know. I don't know what the strengths of the people are. What are we going to do about online ministry? I know here's some principles of online ministry, but I don't know. It's like, how is it possible that in an interview, you could be asked like 10 different times what you're going to do, and every time you respond with, I don't know. But my goal, I think it was I really feel this. It's my responsibility, and it's everyone's responsibility as a leader to build the organization, the team, or the church, not on my gifting, but on the gifting of the people, on the strengths of the church themselves. And so I couldn't make any decisions until I knew what that was.
Yeah, I agree. But go deep a little bit more about that. So, but knowing that you had to get the people, and you had to understand the people, and then make sure that you were able to find their strengths and explore those strengths, right? And make sure that they were prepared in order to know that. What are some of the things that that took a lot of courage for you to start on one end saying, I don't know, but then at some point you decided, okay, now I have enough information, and I have enough know-how, and I have enough leadership, and I am going to be courageous in the moment. What did you do in that moment to make you say, okay, I'm ready. It's time to go?
I knew, so I don't know if this will directly answer it. You can redirect it if this doesn't hit you.
Gladly.
There were some people who left the church at different times because of choices that I made. I either followed up with them or followed up with their friends. Because I knew for some of those people who left, that hurt. And I knew for some of those people who I knew their reasons, there was no reason. If I knew their reasons, there was no reason for me to call, because I wasn't going to change who we were. Right. So I wasn't trying to reconvince them that the decision was the right way. But I did talk to their friends, because I know that hurts. And so when I was at a moment, and I know this sounds dumb, but you typically want to go, oh, make it at a moment in which you can insulate yourself from the pain. Now, I wanted to feel the pain. Yeah. I wanted to know the grief and the pain that was caused, because otherwise I'd lose my pulse of the people. Yeah. I'd lose my connection as to where we were. And so I wasn't going to make any decision until I knew what it would cost for us to move forward and how that would hurt some people in there. And once I knew that, I had the conviction to move forward that this was the right way.
Yeah. And that takes courage. It takes courage to get to that level, to get to the deepest levels in which you can actually understand enough. Yeah. Right? We're never going to understand everything. We can't. I
never wanted my leadership, like people will say, oh, make all your changes in the first 90 days.
Right.
I think that's
the heart of my question. Like, you didn't do that.
Yeah, everybody says that, but I feel like if you do that, you establish yourself as an agenda, not a person. Yeah. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Because if someone's first impression of me is not, this is who I am and this is how I care about you, but this is who I am and this is where we're going and this is why this old way is wrong, I'm an agenda.
Yeah.
And that agenda only works for a certain period
Yeah.
of time, and then eventually it will phase out.
That's exactly.
And so
right.
I go, no, I want to have a connection, like a relational connection.
Yeah.
We are people. And now as people, we're deciding we're going this way, and this is how it's going to hurt. But I want to be a person as a leader. I never want to be an agenda.
Yeah, I'm gonna have courage to do the connection before the next piece.
Because I tell you what,
Like Ted Lasso did not Ted Lasso did not pull old boy from the starting lineup until he really got to know everybody on the team.
if you have no idea what we're talking about, Ted Lasso is our favorite show, and it is on Apple TV about a fictional soccer coach. Shout out to Jason Sudeikis for all the joys within that. But it's so much easier. It is so much easier to just come in and go, this is what we're doing now.
Yeah. Yep. I look at courage, and I look at you, and I look at some of the people on our staff, and I look at some of the leaders in our church. And I look at, courage to me when I look at them is loving, even if by doing so it doesn't help you fill in the blank. Whatever that is. Why are you loving? I'm doing it because I have, I look at, here we go, back to the Bible. Jesus looked at the lady, right?
Yeah.
And she was the prostitute.
Yep.
And everybody else, they thought they were being courageous by condemning her. You should never do that. The real courage came from Jesus to stand up for her in the moment.
Yeah.
That's real courage.
Yeah.
That's the hard courage. We look at it on the other end. It's courage to call it out.
Mm-hmm.
No, it's courage to stand up for the person who is alone.
Absolutely.
And I think that's really, when I talk about courage to our online team, it's like that's who we are. We're courageous because we're going to call out the things that we want others to see so that we can all come together.
So let me pivot it back to something else that we've had frequent discussions about just recently. Is as we talk about cultural changes, because we are always working on our culture. It is never static. It is dynamic by nature.
Very alive.
And so the posture that we've taken is we've said we are not going to, and our culture as a church has changed dramatically over the last 4 years. And we said, we're never going to counteract the existing culture. We're going to start a new culture and let it slowly overtake the old culture. And so one of my just personal principles that I believe in leadership is you never count your no's. Only count your yeses. And so we've done things and we expected great attendance and had sparse attendance. And I've gone, I'm not counting the people who aren't here. I'm counting the people who are here.
Yeah.
Because we're now further along than we would have been had we not done this. And one of the principles behind that is, honestly, for one, it's less combative. Starting a new culture and letting it slowly take over the old one is far less combative, but it's far more effective.
Yeah.
Like, it allows you to lead for the long haul and not a moment. And one of the things that I believe is most people, the reason why they don't do this is not just because it takes time, but I think they would rather stand up and self-righteously declare why their view of the future is right and have people disagree with them and for them to be forced out.
Yep.
Most people would rather, in a moment, be wrong and yet feel right than make an impact.
Yep.
Which is just a fascinating thing. We would rather feel right than actually make a difference. And it is not courageous to be self-righteous in your opinion.
Oh, man, that's exactly right.
It is courageous to do what it takes to make a difference.
That's exactly right. I love that. Hey, I got this one last question because you have intelligently and so
intelligently
and dynamically named this entire episode not courage. Of all the I mean, you gave a litany of things that we as leaders think can be courage.
Yeah.
That is not. What is the one thing of all the things that you mentioned that will absolutely crush your influence?
That will crush your influence?
Yeah.
It's not necessarily the thing that was named within there. When the person feels, so I have got a pastor friend, he says it like this: the mission of the church is to reach the world. The mission of the church, go and make disciples of all nations. He says we lose our leadership when the people inside the church feel like we love those outside the church more than those inside. And I believe we're called to love them the same. we're called to love them the same. You cannot love the vision more than your people.
Yeah.
You should love them the same amount.
Yeah.
If you love the people more than the vision that God is leading you to, then you won't lead.
Yeah.
You'll just coddle.
Yeah.
And that is not courageous in any way. And so I think that's a hard thing. I think the greatest risk we have as leaders is we care more about what we could do than the people who we do it with. And I think people see right through that.
Wow, man. Born out of that was a value for the, right? It's people over mission over sentiment. Yeah.
Oh, look at that.
Look at that.
One of our team values.
That is good. I love it. Hey, listen, that's about where we're going to wrap it up. What do you want someone to know about not courage?
Don't be self-righteous and call yourself courageous. Like, don't be reckless and call yourself courageous. Don't be hard to work with and call yourself courageous. That's not what it is. Know what's at stake and then take courageous steps. Feel the pain.
Yeah, man, that's good. Sometimes knowing what not to do is just as good as not or knowing what to do. So,
and we'll get to what to do next
there
episode.
We go. Episode 52 today, Not Courage. Thank you so much for joining us today. Man, this is good stuff. I love this series. If you're new to the podcast, well, welcome. We're so glad that you joined us today. If you haven't yet subscribed, it would mean the world to us if you did that now. Also, post about it, rate and review, or both. You won't believe how that gets this podcast in the hands of so many more leaders just like you. And we love hearing your stories of how the podcast is working in your life and business. If you have a story, visit leadinghope.online and send that to us. We want to hear from you guys. Let us know. And just remember this today. Everyone has 20 minutes to learn to become a better leader. Make it count.